Right.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Thursday, June 27th, 24 Nantucket Historical Commission meeting. I've got a special greeting here. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. All votes will be conducted via roll call vote. Attendees via Zoom must use their real name for accurate minutes. And the chair will recognize participants when to speak. Please mute yourself when not speaking. So I'll begin with taking a roll call here. In the room, we've got George Butterworth here. Morning. Rita Carr.
Here.
Clement Durkis.
Here.
And Holly.
Present.
Welcome. And on Zoom, we've got Abby Demolina.
Here.
And Mickey Rowland.
I'm here for the moment, but I'm gonna have to step out periodically. I'm here. I'm here for now.
Thanks, Mickey. Appreciate it. And with us in the room, we have Mary Bergman. Thank you for joining. All right, well, let's begin. Is there any public comment? Mary? No? Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the staff update.
Okay. Where the staff update would be. Everything's been a blur. I guess maybe we'll start with you all. There was a CLG training that was sent out from the state. We were required to have one member from each commission, so I think there's a couple people that did attend. Thank you.
I'll
So
tell you what I heard, but I attended.
we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow being CLG if you're attending. But I think that was important. I want to see more CLG required training on that. And I don't know, what was there? Was there something specific?
I think it was just, no.
I think we'll talk
general.
more about other stuff, but
Yeah.
that's it.
Thank you, Holly. Did everyone have a chance to read the letter, and are there any comments regarding Pleasant Street and Williams Lane?
I read the letter, and didn't we, when you say in here, so you describe option 2, and then you said option 3 was supported by a majority. But I thought it was option 2 that was supported by the majority.
So, oh yeah, that's a typo. That's just a typo. Sorry.
That's what I thought.
The order of the options changed. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll make that correction.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for catching that.
Well, because it was under option 2.
Yes,
but then
yeah,
it said-
yeah.
Okay, great.
That's just a typo. Sorry.
Great.
So how does the rearranged version go now?
So it is, so option 1 is the two-way traffic with keeping the trees where they are and the pedestrian pathway going around them. Option 2 is the one-way traffic with the multi-use path in what is currently the southbound lane, saying we would need a traffic monitoring study. And then where it says option 3 within the option 2 section, that should say 2 and not 3. And then option 3 is the two-way traffic with the pedestrian path where the trees are currently, and then planting the new trees.
And we're estimating option 3.
We're not really.
Which option?
We're not really making a recommendation. That
These are more our comments, but 1 and 2 are the preferable options.
Yeah, you're very clear about what option 3 is. Let's get smart.
yes, because we had talked about that tree canopy contributing a lot to the.
In the narrowness of
Character
the
of that.
road, and once you take up the trees and try to fit more, 3 lanes, then you've lost that.
More concrete, more whatever.
Maybe add
So
in
which are,
providing a.
it says option 3, but we're not.
Right here.
Okay, Yep.
And that-
Mhm.
and I will say this for the record, Mike was, curious, he came to me the other day, and, how everyone's going.
How's that letter coming?
Yeah, well, kind of, and I explained, we want to get this letter to you because I know that's gonna help. And he's wanting to have this dialogue for this project and any other projects, which I thought was very, very helpful and appreciate.
I know we're not supposed to make traffic recommendations, but I think option 2 basically will be disastrous.
Yeah.
And I think that's what,
Yeah, is it clear that as I understood it, we're really supporting option 1. We're supporting option 1 and not the others. Is that really that clear in this letter?
yeah, I would vote for 1.
Well, I mean, I think that if this is about what the transportation planner is going to come up with plans for. So I think the dialogue continues when the plans develop.
And I think at our last meeting, we had talked about the letter not necessarily being endorsing a specific option or plan, but to say, these are what we discussed, to lay out what we discussed, lay out sort of general feelings about each of them, and then also to give what we feel is important in terms of characteristics of, maintaining the trees, of minimizing any road striping, minimizing the signage, using natural materials like a grass median or Belgian block, not introducing more modern materials. And so that's sort of in that last paragraph, talking about natural materials for the curbing, medians, and paths, minimal road striping and signage.
Maybe we take out that under option 2, that last sentence, and just not put it in there.
That was something we specifically discussed, though,
We
that it
did.
wasn't
We did,
unanimous.
and we did vote on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was part of the motion, I think, in this,
Yeah.
that be reflected, so.
So option 2 was supported by most of our commission, one-way traffic.
Yeah, if I voted for that, I would love to withdraw my vote. but
Although
I think
you were against
I
it,
think you were.
And
I was
Tom
against
was
it, but it
against
was
it.
like, it was fuzzy and
I think the majority of us were in support of it, I believe, as at least doing the pilot study and not saying we're in
Okay,
support of it entirely, but we would be supportive of potentially doing that pilot to see how it goes.
maybe that should be more clear that we're supporting a pilot study, or not the whole system.
I think the pilot is the whole camel sticking his nose under the edge of the tent. But once they get it, because this is what the town wants, and they're gonna ride this pony as far as they can.
You think this is what they want? The one way?
Absolutely. They want one-way traffic and give half the street to bikes.
I don't
Absolutely.
think traffic safety.
Mike Burns was in love. Every other option Mike Burns told us why we couldn't possibly do it. The one he wants is option 2.
Well, if it turns out that the study is disastrous, don't you think they would back away from it, or you think?
They make their living by making major changes. The planning people are in love with that. And who is going to decide it was disastrous? The people who wanted to do it in the first place are the ones who are passing judgment.
Well, at
I
least
think
it's,
I think you're making a lot of assumptions. I think the whole point of us at least supporting the pilot was to show, as you said, Angus, exactly the fact that if it is disastrous, we will have data that is showing that it is disastrous. And I do agree. I think we should, like Mickey, I think your point is a good one. Like, we should show that we are just supporting doing the pilot to get the data, but that we don't necessarily endorse one way or the other. But I don't think that we can say, like, we know that the town is going to do X, Y, or Z. I think we at least need to get the data to support one way or the other. I mean, I don't think that we can operate with all those assumptions if we don't know that for a fact.
I'm still okay with supporting the study.
Yes, So maybe I can add, or it can read it, so in where it says preceded by a pilot traffic monitoring study, that can say which must be, to make it clear, like we're saying this study has to happen.
Well,
Or-
I'd be more specific and say that we're in favor of the study, but are waiting for our judgment on final decisions on the rest, something to that effect. But just that we're supporting the study.
This isn't the end all be all. They want to study. If they want our opinions.
But also, I mean, if you do the one way, then you're not cutting down trees. You're maintaining the narrowness of the character of the concrete. If one way turns out to be a traffic nightmare, I mean, I think the one way is the only way to get it, keep it small. We're not pouring more concrete, not.
Well, unless the path goes on the other side of the trees.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have been completely for option one and tell the people whose yard it is, say, oh,
Yeah.
I really wish it weren't coming closer to our house, but I think.
I thought the feelings were somewhat amenable to option one.
Yeah, they were kind of back and forth. And he was actually very good about personally giving up his own front lawn for the abutting property. But he was worried about his brother who, even though his brother's got much more of a front lawn, his brother seemed to be the one who was concerned about the encroachment.
So all these are things that would get worked out as the plan develops.
Right. And I think, mentioning the fact that what's important overall, is outlined in here, and the fact that we're part of the platform is the most important.
So they'll ask us again when something comes up.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Mary.
Hi, Mary Bergman, Nantucket Preservation Trust. Mr. Chair, through you to Holly. Could you scroll up? I wonder if I just think, if this commission wants to mention that that area does have a high integrity of historic properties. I'm just thinking like, why is this different than say I don't want to say anything I'll regret, but other roads. And I think you just mentioned a couple of them, and that might be worth noting somewhere. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary.
That's a great idea.
Excellent addition.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I agree. I think that's a good point to add that, we put in a line, something like that, Mary, that there's a high concentration of historic integrity property, something like that in there, that might be helpful.
The same contributing factors, yeah, we need that, we've got a whole plethora of ages of that area. It's on Williams and Pleasant.
So we will make the edits and then, how's it work if we just send it out to everybody and they respond to Holly?
Yep.
Does that work?
Good.
Holly will get it to Mike.
Well, what I'll.
Or it comes
do,
from Rita.
Yeah, so basically, if you send me if you're good with it, great, so if you have edits, then I'll send them to Angus and Rita, so they can incorporate that, and then once they're good, then I'll send it to.
Great, thank you.
So a few of us have like 3 or 4 days left on this commission, so is that gonna happen soon?
I think yes, we could even make these edits.
You can send,
Today, yeah.
you've got
During
comments,
the meeting?
yeah, if you want, whenever you're able to send it today, if you're able to.
Definitely.
I would say if you could send comments back, Nikki, as soon as you receive it, if you're able, that'd be great, we'll incorporate them.
I'll try to do that. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, well, let's move on to 6 North Beach Street. Holly, can you give us an update on
Yeah. So
this?
this project, twofold. One, it has a special permit MCD from the planning board. Within that MCD is a requirement for, I'm trying to get the page.
Yeah, it's 17 with the map.
Okay. Thank you. There was a requirement that the planning board put in place for off-street parking for like drop off, kind of very similar to what you see on Old South Road in front of the market. Not parking, it's literally drop off. In that case, that was for the bus, but. So it's had to, obviously that kind of stuff, because it's in the town right away to go to the select board. There was a question of the select board on whether or not the HTC and the Control Commission reviewed. I did get up and say the HTC reviewed plans for this, the entire proposal. There was a brand new building there, and I know both we and Angus are aware of it from reviewing it from advisory comments. This was looked at for the hardscaping. Again, HTC's purview is on the property, not the public way. So, I guess at the end of the day, there is approved plans from their perspective, but the select board really wanted to be very proceeding and recommending that. Your comments.
Holly,
Yes.
I don't remember this version going to the HTC. This looks new to me. And I looked at a lot of those plans before. I didn't remember seeing any of this drop off space.
It was there on the hardscaping plan.
Was it?
Yes, it was. It wasn't this obviously detailed, because this is not a, obviously, if you're aware, or not a landscaping plan.
I think when we were looking at it, Mickey, it was more about gates and fences and pool and raised decks, and I don't think we were really examining North Beach Street.
I do remember the landscape plan, and I honestly just, maybe I missed it, but I just don't remember the whole streetscape changing. I'm not opposed to what they're doing here, except from a different perspective, I think that they probably ought to have a curb cut here for disabled access from that pull-off space, but that's not our purview here necessarily. So I'm not opposed to it, I just don't necessarily remember seeing it.
Yeah, I think it was mostly brought up near the pool that was proposed. I think it was in that deck of that back building, in the middle.
This crazy canting of that structure, I mean, like, finally, this makes sense here.
Yeah, yeah.
Where there's actually a sidewalk that's perpendicular to the stair.
Yeah.
And to the house. It makes sense for, what the planning board has given the okay to is, not having parking, but having that be shuttle service and other alternatives instead of parking to have this be a safe pull off for people. So that seems to make sense.
I don't know if looking at the street view, Google Street View would be helpful or beneficial about moving that. Bear with me, Vicky and Patty. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, and also remind you all, one of these buildings, and I can't remember which one, I think it's this one. Is a contributing structure, the other ones are, and it was in the survey of the branch point. The other ones are all contemporary from the 80s. So I believe that spot,
I think these are all new.
there's one that is older.
It's the one on Dolphin, to the right of Dolphin Court is an old original building. But I think these two on the street are new.
This one,
I think they're both, keep going down. The next one is an old, very old building.
The one on the other side of the pole, that one.
Yeah. That's the old Dolphin guest house.
So this is where it's gonna have to jog in here.
Mm.
You know, and not to either commission's, purview or even frankly the select board, but there was a lot of issues with the neighborhood and there was a, lawsuit and all that kind of stuff, so there were requirements that came out of that with the agreement with the neighbors. But yes, this is where it's gonna be connected. And this is all gonna be filled in, this is where the other buildings have been. Yeah, this will give you all. That one.
Yeah, good. I had no idea where.
So commissioners, what do you think about the impact on the streetscape? I'm assuming that all the materials would be consistent with what's already there. It's just that there would be this diversion and then back again.
I don't have a problem with it.
The sidewalk continues, I assume. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, absolutely.
there's so much traffic on that street. I think the pull off is a good idea. Nicer way to handle it, maybe.
I agree.
What do you think, Rita?
So Holly, I know you mentioned, like Old South Road, is that for meat and fish, is that on their property though? That,
I
Hold
don't
on.
know the specifics of that one.
'cause that's sort of what I'm rubbing up against, is this like private access for the Brant being put on, what is public way, and I know like the White Elephant, like they have that pole on and like the Nantucket Hotel, but like that's on that their private property, so that's what I'm rubbing up against. Like, I don't think it feels historic to be putting this like private access on the public, in the public right of way. I think like as, if they're reusing the existing curb stones as much as possible and the existing bricks, I mean, I don't know, I do like, because right now, I know the Google Street View is from 2019, and I know obviously this property has changed a lot in the intervening 5 years, but there's like that driveway shown on the Street View in 2019 that it seems like if people needed to drop off, they could pull in there, but was that the
I
issue
think
with
that's disappearing. isn't it?
with the planning board? Like, did the neighbors, was that the problem? They didn't want that anymore, or?
I'm not privy to that whole
Okay.
thing. I just know that out of their review of the special permit, to be, that they wanted to have this access.
Who wanted to have it?
Was that
Who is recommending the access?
planning board?
Well, and are they eliminating parking? I know they're limiting it to two vehicles, one handicap access, so they're taking it from down to three parking
Mhm,
places, and that's it.
With how many units? They're like
Oh, I can't remember exactly.
a lot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe 20 total.
Well, Rita, you bring up a good point. I mean, ideally, the sidewalk would be like all the other sidewalks that just continues straight, and that the parking or drop off would be within the boundaries of the Brandt's land. And
So we'd
as
have to
such, that should be part of the planning of leaving a loop or a turnout or something within their property. Than to usurp the public land and change the character of it.
Yeah, I mean, I will note though, I still feel like, we were just talking about the sort of public access at, along Pleasant Street, where there are a really high concentration of well-preserved, contributing properties, maintaining a lot of historic integrity. And within the context of this stretch of North Beach Street, I think it is a lot different. I mean, sort of catty corner, there's like where like N Magazine has their offices, and there's just like that whole big parking area. It's like sort of right there. Yeah, before my time, but yeah, so I mean, I'm not. I don't know, I'm not necessarily a,
Well, if you look at this, could, like at the White Elephant, so could the pull in come as close in as the sidewalk does? So I guess flip them, get the sidewalk to go straight, and then the pull in comes in where the sidewalk is. Anybody following me?
Yes.
Like at the
New
White
sidewalk.
Elephant, so the sidewalk goes straight in front of the White Elephant. You
I don't
go,
think there's room.
Yeah.
I don't
White
think there's
Elephant
enough
walk
space.
They're
space.
Yeah.
taking that sidewalk spot right here.
The buildings
That's
are
what
like
they're
right
implementing
there.
For the drop off, they're pushing the sidewalk into the private.
so is it narrower?
Yeah,
Also,
so-
to go to the, further down, there's another plan that shows the
Okay,
whole
there's enough
lot, I
space
think.
in here.
I think that was the only one that I had here, which is associated with the, right?
Yeah,
Oh, no, I know.
no land there.
Each of them. This one, the bracket one.
Right, yeah.
And- You know, page on this?
Oh, sorry,
The full bracket. This is it.
yeah, I think that's the only
That's the only one.
plan that we have
That's
in the
only thing I
packet.
know.
And this is everything that was in the select board packet.
It showed a big enough,
Yeah, no, because I,
maybe that's the select board version, but it showed the parking, the 2 spaces that they were going to provide
it's
and
part of it.
like the rest of the lot.
It is exhibit A.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah. Sorry, page 9.
Oh, yeah, this shows the, exhibit A shows the whole layout.
Let me see if I can really tweak it.
Yeah. I can't-
This is better. So,
This is the,
you can see the cutout here.
So the existing drive is turning into a walkway and a deck.
Yeah, because you have that new here.
new structure.
And there's also gonna be vegetation, obviously, because you have a pool and
Where's the pool?
review right here within the building deck. And I remember that.
So why can't this drop off be along Dolphin Court instead of on the major thoroughfare of North Beach?
That's the whole contention
Yeah,
of utilizing Dolphin Court for the neighbors. That was
that was like in the special permit multiple times. It was like there will be no vehicular access
Correct.
on Dolphin Court, which.
Correct. So in this, if anybody, I know with Abby sitting as an alternate on the planning board, I don't think you were sitting on this one at the time, were you? Can't remember, it's been a while. But regardless, there are requirements that are allowed to be waived in lieu of X, Y, and Z, in lieu of additional requirements. So, you'll see that there is in the special permit, there's bike racks out of those, there's other additional things to get people to, not want to bring a car.
Like the bus passes, which
The bus pass.
nobody in there will use.
Well, bus passes, now it's free, so that's nice. Well, I mean, I think I like this concept that if you are a guest house close enough to town that most guests should walk. You should be discouraging from bringing your car.
It's a good
Does
point,
that
Polly.
mean-
I mean, I would just say overall, like, we do try to encourage alternative transportation because we really don't want people, we don't want to encourage, especially downtown, more parking and more driving than there already is, as everyone is well aware. But you did bring up a good point with Dolphin Court and Rita, you are correct. Like, we also, and I listened to the discussion, but I wasn't a voting member on this. But, the neighbors are also very passionate about limiting vehicle access, as we can imagine. So you know, when something like this comes, we try to be really respectful of the community around the space. So, you know, respecting their desire for Dolphin Court, like you're saying, not having additional vehicular access. So I think that I hear what you guys are saying about the drop off, but I think that sometimes like that seems like that's the easiest compromise with where we are, because like you pointed out, if the alternative is to put it on Dolphin Court, that would be far less desirable for the neighbors. So we just want to make sure that we're kind of respectful of everyone's thoughts when these types of projects like redevelopments are proposed.
Well, but also Dolphin Court is, you know, let's just say a dozen residents compared to the hundreds or thousands of people who are on North Liberty Street. I wonder if there's a option to explore with getting rid of the curb in these areas and having a continuous sidewalk that the bus can, or whoever's dropping off, can pull, you know, onto without like jumping the curb. But the consistency of that, because there isn't really a pull off like this in town, is there?
Well, you know, one could argue, here, I'm gonna back up again. You know, if you guys can see it. You know, one could argue, looking at our GIS, you know, I know this is on their property, but it's very similar in that regard. I mean, their vehicles for but
You want to do a street view of that? In front of the Nantucket, because, yeah, like you say, they pull off into their own area. But, so what happens with the sidewalk though?
it does the same, similar thing.
It goes around.
Goes around, it's not as thick. I don't think over here.
By the way, at the Nantucket Hotel, they don't ever use that for dropping people off, really, because they have it crammed full of their fire truck, their tour bus, and their other own vehicles. So it's not really open to anyone to pull in there and go through.
Agree that it's not as similar, because again, this is on their property, the other one is in the town right away. But character and setting, again, I think it would be a little disingenuous to say that it's introducing something completely new, because it's very similar here. Yes, it's new on Beach Road.
And actually, the Nantucket Hotel, I think when people are walking, they don't tend to follow the sidewalk because it goes so far inland.
Yeah.
It's a nuisance.
Right.
But I have one other question, which is, I know on my street, which is a guest house street, North Water Street, the guest houses give out parking permits to people staying there, that they can put in a temporary placard in their car so they can park all night. And if the planning board is trying to curtail people bringing their cars, as you're creating more and more guest house spaces on North Beach Street, are those guest houses going to be allowed to give out resident parking permits like they do at the other guest houses on the island? I know the ones on North Water.
George,
Yeah.
I hear your question, but I don't think that's not a planning board. Planning board wouldn't determine the parking permits. That's a town thing. So I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that's
Yeah.
not something the planning board has.
Well, it's just
purview over.
interesting because they're saying we were gonna do all these things to discourage cars, like require them to give up bus permits. But bus tickets to passes to people, but if they also are giving out parking passes for the street, that would seem to be a conflict in what you're trying to accomplish.
It's good.
So again, so that's the town and probably, I don't know who, like if that's part of the town, how that's done.
I think that's the police department, through Amy Baxter, but I think that she's been working on a lot of different aspects of permits and licensing and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know where that stands, what their requirements are on that, but.
Could it be added to the requirements? They've got a lot of requirements here about what.
Well, no, again, there,
Well, this is sort of-
the planning board is only guided by the requirements of the zoning bylaw. it's very clear. They can add additional, again, you're getting, when somebody is asking for waivers for certain requirements, which there are boilerplate waivers that are requested because the nature of our old historic district. We obviously can't have all the parking lot locations on, and that is, I would say, across the board. In all kind of planning movements, if you will, of encouraging alternative transportation, encouraging, walking and biking and all that, kind of stuff, and getting away from the parking requirement mandates. In my former life, that's all I was doing was counting parking spaces. Horrible. I don't agree with that at all, but, I think just to point out the character and setting component. Is this for introducing something 100% new? I wouldn't. But to Rita, your point of materials. Any other project that is outside of HTC's purview, like this within the right of way, I usually get involved. And that's one of my first things, is making sure retention of existing materials. Something to Vicky's point about ADA, don't know the specifics, it was really clear on those plans on what they how the material is going to be. But retaining, if the curbing is going to be just moved in, is it going to be flush? I think
Yeah.
those are gonna be important.
Well, because, at least in 2019, there wasn't, there was a break in the curb there, so they will have to be bringing in some new material, but as long as it's to match the existing.
Yeah. And I think
that's
those,
important.
those type of comments, I think are important. And inappropriate, absolutely.
Does, I can't think of another place on North Beach Street where there's a cut in or a curve, a turnout for the sidewalk accommodating a property, so I guess my question to the commission is does it make any more sense to play with the elevation rather than the actual turning out of the whole sidewalk?
But is that considered a problem when every time someone turns in there, they block the sidewalk? So that's the trade-off.
Yeah, that'll be a traffic safety concern if you just want to try to park on a lower sidewalk. I don't think that'll be what they're looking for.
There is a lot of foot traffic on that sidewalk.
Yeah, especially for the children.
Yeah.
So, would anyone like to make a motion about a response regarding how we feel about this?
Personally, I still don't have a big concern. I know it's a little bit unique. We're retaining a sidewalk. This is, when I was a kid, this was a asphalt sidewalk that would just barely it was a raised, like a rolled curb to go up to it. So what's there now is not terribly historic either. It never had a solid granite curb. It wasn't brick. It was sort of like the road raised up on the sidewalk level when I was little. So I get the purpose of this. I think it's a good use of the, it makes sense technically, and I just don't think it's a big enough change in this area. It's not like it's on Center Street or Fair Street or something. This is out on North Beach. So I'm okay with it personally.
I agree with Nikki. I think, and I also think we want to make sure that, to Mickey's point, like we're commenting on things that are like big and really are a bigger risk, because I don't think it's worth, opposing it for that. And then possibly, just making the process more complicated and longer, but then not really substantial changes.
And to use compatible materials, like Rita has said, use.
To fill in what's missing now. Yeah. George?
Yeah, I think, I basically agree with Mickey. I don't want to have to pull over beyond the sidewalk.
Right. So Rita, your concern was about it taking up the public land. Are you,
I mean, I still have that concern, but I'm clearly in the minority, so I can, someone can make a motion and.
Are we, is the public basically getting the use of private land as compensation? They're not allowed,
Yeah,
at some
I-
future date to remove the sidewalk and say, oh, we're gonna have a lawn there. I
I
see.
mean, this is a requirement out of the fire department, so as long as this particular use is there, they're gonna have to have this requirement.
Yeah.
Unless they decide to rename the entire fire department. In the drive.
would someone like to make a motion to, write a. Who's the letter going to? The.
Select board.
Select board. With our comments?
Yeah, I'll motion that we write a letter to the select board, essentially saying we're okay with the proposed changes. In terms of the curb cut and handicapped access, I'll deal with that from the Commission on Disability as a separate issue.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Clement. On your motion making,
Aye.
Clement,
Aye.
Abby,
Aye.
Rita,
I'll abstain.
George,
I,
and I as well.
We're good.
One, two,
There's six
three.
of you today, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
there's
so
six.
it's
So
five
5 in
and-
favor, 1 abstention.
And an abstention. Yeah.
I'm used to that 85.
And
And with that, Mr. Chair, I think it would be helpful to be as succinct as you had said, with the support, but maybe outlining the concerns as far as the consistent material, reutilizing materials, those kind of things. And then anything that's new is actually consistent with what would be like we normally provide anyways. I think that would be helpful.
All right. So next up is the demolition delay warrant article that is being brought up for the special town meeting. Mary, do you want to speak to that?
I'm gonna,
Or Rita?
well, no,
Or not?
so I'm gonna recuse myself from this discussion because MPT is involved with doing this, so I'm gonna step away from the table.
Okay.
Hello, Mary Bergman, Nantucket Preservation Trust. This is a amendment to the existing zoning code that is being sponsored by the Nantucket Preservation Trust, and me as this lead signature. This was developed in consultation with town staff, over the course of last fall and is substantively the same as the zoning bylaw that was discussed, I think, at this committee here and there. Essentially it does two things. The first is it would extend the demolition delay bylaw period from 30 days to 180 days, which is 6 months. And it clarifies the process that I personally believe is not being followed into the spirit of the law, which is the existing demolition delay bylaw. It's not entirely clear if you need to receive historic, what this will clarify that you need to receive a certificate of occupancy from the HDC before, or excuse me, certificate of appropriateness from the HDC before you can advertise the structure available for move off. Because right now, the way that it's functioning most of the time, as we know. Somebody's going over to Holly, they're submitting their move off demo application, and then they're going right over to the INM and submitting their ad to advertise the structure for move off. What that means is that by the time it's heard by the HDC, oftentimes that ad has already run its course, and it's difficult, I think, for a potential person interested in the structure, if they can't even like access the view pack because it's not up yet, how do they know what the structure looks like? So just trying to make that process make more sense. Also, you know, that you would have to go to the, as outlined in the existing code, you'd go to the building inspector. They would say, yes, the structure is, you know, fit for human habitation and has reuse potential. Then you go to the HDC. Then it would be advertised. So, you know, as it came up at the HDC earlier this week, I think it seemed to me the HDC was, many members were interested in this bylaw, saw that it had merit. I think there will be discussion about, is the 6-month delay too long? So that's something, you know, I'm thinking about, is how much we'd be, you know, wanting to compromise on that. I think there is a point, you know, that we can reach that would, you know, I would really like the HTC support. I'd like the support of the NHC. So any questions that you have?
Thank you, Mary. Commissioners, do you have questions?
I do. So Mary, I have a couple questions. First is, as I recall, the existing demo delay or demolition process only deals with, or maybe it's the advertising residential structures, not commercial.
That's correct. It is, Holly, could you scroll down a little bit? Yeah, so under A, statement of purpose, it's to demolish residential structures, and that does seem to include sheds, as last Tuesday's HDC indicated. Sheds, garages, but yes, not commercial buildings, which is something that, you know, is in the back of my mind, because I do think about Harbor Square, the future Harbor Square, and those buildings. But the changes that we made, and the reason why we didn't make that change, you know, in this bylaw at this time, is that I think the intent of this bylaw is to preserve existing year-round housing stock and reduce waste. It's a little strange that this is not about historic structures in particular. You know, again, I'm hopeful that introduction of this bylaw gives us an opportunity to, again, remind the public that the HDC has a chapter, you know, that they should be following about any historic structures. And I would like to think that those commercial buildings on the square would fall into that. But that's why I didn't include it in this change.
Okay. I guess I understand that. I think it would be great eventually to try to include commercial structures, because it's not just those brick buildings, but it's, I mean, any building downtown, basically.
Yeah.
You know, could get.
That's certainly an amendment, you know, and maybe that's something that we could discuss at the HDC too. I don't know if that could be a good compromise. If we were to shorten that delay, but make it more encompassing.
Provided it's not expanding the proposed amendment in general.
Yeah.
Sometimes when
Yes.
basically, once it gets posted, then it can't change and only deletes.
Right, but those could be amendments made on the floor.
And if I may, sure, I think it's important to realize the distinct differences between the HGC and its special acts. And what is under their purview versus the demo delay that we have, because again, Nantucket does not follow the typical demo delay bylaw in the rest of the Commonwealth and other historic districts because of our special acts. So our demo delay bylaw, I think, was more or less created for that whole recycling aspect. But as we know, over time, there have been some things that hasn't necessarily been clear, and I think clarifying the process is very important. So I'm very thankful and happy that.
Thank you for your help on it.
So, anyone who does anything with building on Nantucket knows everything takes time. So I understand, for the preservation of these structures and saving, landfill mass and, all the reasons that you mentioned, Mary. It makes sense to extend the time. How did you land on that time versus more or less time? If it were going to be changed, does this relate to other timelines in the Commonwealth?
It does relate to other timelines in the Commonwealth. Yeah, it's informed by what is suggested by the Mass Historical Commission for that, to Holly's point, we don't have a demolition delay bylaw that is specific to historic structures, because in theory, the HTC could deny the demolition of any historic structure whenever they would like. However, 6 months is the minimum suggested time. I mean, actually, Mass Historical now, they generally advise you to go for like 18 to get to a year. I know that that's unrealistic, I think, in an island where, we're going from 30 to 60 days, depending on how the bylaw is interpreted. 6 months, again, seemed like the floor for the other municipalities in the state when it comes to being able to move a structure.
Did I miss here? Did you say 18 months is?
Is what this, well, when you're going, again, it's kind of confusing because of, but if you were going for a demolition delay for just historic structures, which again is what most towns are dealing with, because they don't have, most towns, you buy a house, you don't just knock it down. But that's what's
Because
happening.
you want the house.
All right,
Right,
yeah, but, so a lot of the times in these citizen petitions for demolition delays in other towns that are just about historic structures, they'll go in with the full force of 18 months to then maybe get scaled back down to a year or 6 months. I think we felt like 6 months was, in conversations with people who've moved structures, a reasonable amount of time to move a structure. Especially considering if you wanted to move a structure on Nantucket, there are the months of the summer we don't allow you to, although I did notice we had 2 moves in early June this year.
Yes, we did.
So, hearing from people about the permitting that they had to do, inspections, structures that maybe they wouldn't have moved if they'd actually been able to dig in a little more into what the issues with said structure were. So that a homeowner is able to make an informed decision. I'd like to say too, we didn't make any changes to the 30-day advertising period. If you advertise a structure for 30 days and nobody wants it, then you'd be able to demolish it. So this is in that instance where somebody finds something, it's a qualified or whatever the language is, they're,
Bonafide.
it's a real firm, I really want this and I want to make it happen, not, hey, that'd be nice, but I don't have the land. So I'm hopeful that it would be a cost savings to the applicant. I understand, the person trying to demolish the structure, I understand that any delay is not looked on favorably in the construction timeline. But I would hope that the financial incentive of not having to pay to demolish a structure would be meaningful.
We've also been exploring dismantling, so
Yes.
that would give more time for that sort of treatment as well.
Well, that's the other thought. Exactly. Demolition, deconstruction is not demolition, so that would be an acceptable alternative. Again, that hold really is just to allow a person time to move it. If it's a structure that's in bad shape that the building department has said can't be reused, nothing would change. But I don't know right now that people are going to the building department and getting that designation. Because the HDC seems to be having to make decisions that are right now outside of their purview, like as to the condition of a structure.
Right.
So I'm hopeful this might actually make it easier for the HDC if somebody's coming in and they've already gotten that designation. Then the HDC wouldn't have to sit and debate
Well, especially for a structure, I mean, for you, that doesn't, it's not contributing.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things, I think that it could be twofold. One, HTC, yes, you have to have the approval from them in order to move or download stuff there, even if it's not contributing, but at the same time, they, you know, I think to your point, they're always saying, I think I hear Commissioner Oliver say quite a bit. Can somebody go in there and take that up? So I think it's gonna maybe eventually lead into looking at deconstruction. And the point that demolition at the end of the day is only a new phenomenon nationwide since the end of World War II. I think people don't realize that before then, we were deconstructing. That was the norm. That's what we've been doing, especially on it.
Yeah, through you to Holly, that's why the NPT is sponsoring this, even though it deals with structures that are not necessarily historic. Moving structures and reusing structures is a historic use practice on Nantucket. I do think further down the line, I would like to see if this passes introducing deconstruction as a term in the zoning code. But this is a lot to throw at people, so trying to phase it.
At the HDC meeting, there was just some questions about the time period, and it's good to know that this is the way like minimum bare bones bottom of kind of what the timeline is recommended and practiced in the rest of the Commonwealth. The 6 months is the bottom end of a year or 18 months of what is the norm.
One thing that was striking to me when I was collecting signatures for this was talking to the housing office, Christy Parentella, and hearing that, you know, there are people who have structures that they would like the town to move. And the procurement side of things, it takes so long that the town has missed out on being able to move structures because they haven't, you know, been able to fit into that limited window. And I do know that people are kind and generous, and there are some who will wait longer than the prescribed delay. But I know that there are others who will not, unless there is, you know, a bylaw that is holding their feet to the fire. So I think that was really a shame to hear that we'd already missed out on opportunities to move structures for year-round housing.
So there were interested parties for year-round housing, but those were lost because we didn't have the time delays with.
Even just from like through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to be able to move structures there, so.
On that point, Mr. Chair, I just want to mention that taking, I guess, the fact that our period of significance is so
Yes.
broad, right? So we have such a large period of significance of 1975, that the average person doesn't really recognize. And we have the history of moving structures on Nantucket, as we all know. And the fact that, you know, for folks of not only wanting to acquire a structure that needs to be moved and relocated, we know for a fact through our historic tax credit process that there have been structures that were moved regardless of the age and found out, wait a minute, this is a contributing structure, and they were able to apply for tax credits. And this is something that I've been, you know, trying to get the housing office to realize that if the town could get involved, or even in housing in Nantucket, involved with acquiring these structures that are contributing, one, we're doing a preservation need right there, and two, we're doing a housing need. It's my book, it's a win-win, but I think to Mary's point, this is the first step to making so it's more attainable for everybody. That's interesting.
Mary, thank you for bringing this forward. Could I have a motion from the commission?
I had a question. I had my hand up, but I
Oh,
don't do this.
I'm sorry, I missed that, Abby. Go ahead.
No, it's just, Mary, with the way this is worded, you're moving the time period to 180 days, but I just want to make sure I understand kind of contextually. Let's say the parties were able to agree and they could do it in like less than 180 days. It's still okay. Like they could do it in the shorter time period. It just
Oh,
means
yes.
they have Okay, so I
It
just
just
wanted to
means that a
clarify.
demolition permit wouldn't be issued before that period of time, but it doesn't mean. I mean, if the structure is moved, it's gone, then you have no need for a demolition permit because you've already moved it.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, and so I just think, because I think hearing the discussion, maybe when presenting it, this is just my advice from
mhm.
having heard a lot of things being presented for town meeting, is make sure that that context is clear. And then the other thing that you talked about with the advertising period, I would also make sure that that's clear, because I think someone might be afraid, like, oh no, now we're gonna have to advertise it for 6 months. And if you're saying exactly what you said, which is that, no, if it's advertised for 30 days and no one's interested, that's fine. This is really just in the event that, and I think you should use the, like, the Affordable Housing Trust as an example of,
Yeah.
they might not be able to get all the pieces together in 30 days, but if they had 6 months, they could probably figure that process out. Like, I think that would be a really strong, like, as you're kind of marketing
Right.
this to others.
Yes, thank you for that, Abby. I think the other thing to keep in mind is we often hear, well, you know, the applicant, the owner of the structure that's gonna be demolished, that means they'll have to wait. The people who are moving these structures are moving them to live in them. They want them on their land as soon as possible. So
Right.
they don't want to
Within
wait
their-
6 months either, but yeah, it's a race against time, I think, for both parties.
Absolutely, and I think that's where you can say it's up to 6 months. Obviously, if they're able to move it sooner, that's totally fine. It's just, as you pointed out, if you're doing a procurement process, it might take more than 30 days. It'll probably take less than 6 months, but it might be some time period within there, and that's fine. It's just, I would agree with you, doing everything within 30 days is a pretty tight window. So again,
Yeah,
that was just my.
if something was advertised right now, you know, and you're
Right.
in the middle of the summer, I think that's the other, you know, anyway, there's
Yeah.
lots of thoughts, and I appreciate those points.
Well, it seems like a sensible amendment and article.
Mary? Just a question, happen to notice that the Linda Williams signature is on your, is she in favor of this, or what's the other reaction from, like, the planning staff, or how's it look in terms of the public's perspective?
I'm not sure where planning staff is set yet. I know, we defer to Abby, but I know that they're, starting to do their public reviews, here shortly, because of the special town meeting, and that's such a quick timeline. But I'm sure we'll hear comments on that.
The original draft of this was developed and shared with the planning staff last fall, and you know, anecdotally, I can say that I've heard people on or near the planning staff say, I'm glad someone's doing this. As to individual parties, don't want to speak on anyone personally, but we have a diversity of people supporting this.
Vicky, I signed it, just for the record.
I saw that. Yeah.
I'm not a voting member, but I did sign it, so there's
Yeah.
that.
You know, I mean, when I pulled the papers, Dave Iverson was there at the town clerk's office, and we, you know, discussed it. I think it's not a surprise because there's been such an uptick in demolitions on the island. I think the community seems to be sort of taken aback by the sheer volume of demolitions of perfectly acceptable usable structures. So hopefully they come out and vote.
I mean, I guess, Mickey, to speak to your point, I think that, at least for me personally, what I appreciated, what Mary and I discussed, and I just discussed with Holly, is I think the clarification is what's really important. And also what Mary brought up about, you know, the potential, the ability to reuse structures for housing for year-round residents. Like, I think those are things that I can't speak for my other planning board members, but at least for me, like, that's something that I think is important. And, you know, the example Mary brought up of, you know, Christy saying, like, that doesn't surprise me. I think the current process and what Mary talked about is, like, people go, they'll apply for their certificate and then they'll do the advertising at the same time. Like, I just think having it clarified, like, if it's clearer, I think that's the benefit for everybody. And I think honestly, and again, this is me, I would prefer to see a structure reused than demolished if it's usable, you know? And like the example of, you know, you just think about if we could move a house and turn into year-round housing rather than having to build something completely new. I mean, I think financially also that's a lot more viable. So again, just my opinion.
Would
Yeah, we-
anyone like to make a motion to write a letter of support for the article? George,
To make a motion.
second?
Second.
Thank you, Clement, on your motion, George.
Aye.
Clement,
Aye.
Mickey,
Aye.
Abby,
Aye.
I as well. Thank you, Mary, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Rita. So let's move on to ongoing survey work. Well, yeah, I have a bunch of little edits
Oh,
to
awesome.
send you, but please go ahead.
Yes, so, I wanted first, thank you, to the commission for looking at these. I hope we can kind of get this wrapped up and send it to Al. Sorry. Didn't have any. So basically, that the five batch. We have Word documents too, but that would be easier. They always send it to me, for Word and, yeah, but I'd really like to get, commissioners' comments on these, applications. I don't know if we wanted to spend the time to go through a couple of these, or if we really want, it's up to you, Mr. Chair. Or if we really want to just, have this something that commissioners are not. But I'd really like to get feedback on this batch, that we received. There's quite a bit, we both.
So,
Read it, go ahead.
yeah, so my main question, I have some specific comments that I'll send to you, but there's a number where, like, I just pulled up 9 Orange Street as an example. You know, it says further research is needed to determine the original owners and construction date. You know, it says it was by 1863. We know that's a lot older than that. Are they? Is the I feel like that's not what we were hoping to achieve with these survey forms. We wanted to have that full research done, and I know they had gotten extra funding to do so.
Yes.
So
No,
do we have a remedy for that, or?
I don't know at this time, other than asking what is the difference between the batches that they said that on those
Mhm.
surveys. Yes, for the most part, most of the ones in batch 5 are the ones that were called out for further research, and they came and did further research.
Right, so
And I noticed some of them still I don't know what the reason, because some of them have that note on there and some of them actually don't and actually have the detail.
mhm, yeah.
So I did catch that as well. That was a question that was asked.
And the only time you'd have a date that's that late is if it didn't turn over. You don't have construction dates, but you can find out the first time it was sold with a house on the property.
Correct,
And
that's why we always do circa.
it was probably long before 1863 that it changed hands with a house on it.
I think one of the general comments for me was having more historic photos
Yes.
included. I really hung on the ones that did exist, but there were, I felt too many that didn't have that reference.
And I guess while we're in the surveys aspect, one, obviously, if we could send any comments you have on those specifics, that would be most appreciated. But two, is the speaker survey works in general. I think that's important to mention is, we're wrapping up this particular project for fiscal 22, which got extended, ends in September for this. So we want to make sure that we, are satisfied, but also, fiscal 23, we didn't get an RFP that was conducive to, moving forward. That is still in the works to be redone, so we can get that going. But I think that kind of also ties into, we're not stopping survey work without that being done, because we're also have a CPC project that was approved by town meeting. And, things going to start doing their work with the survey. We did have a kickoff meeting, about that. We're going to do their recon of the West Monument spot. Which should be pretty intense. And I know at some point it'll be before the commission to say where they are in their process. So I want to give an update on that CPC funding project, as well as we also signed in on the CPC project for Main Street. LiDAR scanning, work with it also in works with and so those will be.
So what about the RFPs? One of our greatest successes with the CLG program was getting access to that prioritized funding.
Yep.
But if that funding can only be applied to the stringent conforms of the way it's been in the past, we have too few, if none, who are actually applying because there isn't enough money. Is there a way to still take advantage of those funds and make it still financially worthwhile to a candidate or an applicant to make that work? Or is it kind of an all or nothing thing?
Basically, the funding sources are going to be the same with, it's a 50/50 reimbursable grants from MHC, obviously, dictated from Congress as a ship of, and it's the RFQ, RFP, or we call them, depending on what type of it is, being, their boilerplate given from the state. So they say, Holly, here is your request for proposals that you need to get out there. They have a set boiler of requirements and qualifications that I have to have the request of a consultant. One, from talking to MHC, is we have a small pool of qualified candidates living in Commonwealth of Massachusetts that they can vote on. They're either too busy, working on other projects, what have you. Flip side, trying to look for qualifications, they also have, they list out, we have to have like 5 years being, and show examples of places that you've done survey work within Massachusetts and say, this is what I've done. That's where I have to take that RFQ, and MHC has given me the permission, and working with finance, obviously, but making it so it's less restrictive. But because we recognize that we have subject matter experts on the Nantucket who've done this for sponsored to us, and you can see, these are folks that are here on the Nantucket, but they not necessarily might meet that qualifications, and that's what's kind of been an hindrance, especially knowing that the consultant pool, if you will, choose from is limited. And I shouldn't say just Massachusetts, it's New England is the area, because now they're in Rhode Island, because they've had 40 years of experience. So it's really taking that boilerplate RFQ and paring it down to what would be more beneficial for Nantucket. And the fact that MHC gave the blessing to be able to do that is helpful. So we need that help.
So that's the next step is to tailor that so that we can include the local resources that we have. And is that just a matter of finding time or, I mean, who's?
As you know,
How many hollies can we get?
HGC, as you know, has been my number one priority.
Yeah, is there anything that this commission can do to help, pick up kids from school? No, I'm kidding, but, I feel like we've had such great momentum with the surveys and we just don't want to lose that, especially if we've got resources that are untapped here.
Right.
Okay.
No, I mean, and I wanted to mention that, you know, at least, you know, right now, we're seeing momentum with the CPC project and that's gonna help at least target another neighborhood that we weren't really getting into. Jason always says official, which is helpful, and I think that's really gonna spear a lot of community engagement. Because we weren't necessarily required to have under the MHC grants to have, you know, obviously the outside, we mentioned it, but with the CPC, you're required to have that community engagement, and I think that's also gonna get more momentum. And maybe get some more information, so that, I guess I'll say, even though we're kind of, we're not necessarily moving forward, we're in kind of stagnant when it comes to the federal funding, at least the survey work is still gonna be ongoing in some fashion.
Encouraging.
And I have a question in terms of the CLG funding and the RFQ, you know, were talking about can we change the requirements that we're getting from MHC? Can we change the number of surveys that we're asking for with the funding that we have? Knowing that, you know, in a lot of places, I think this is something that Paul ran into is that, you know, we have the gap in what's digitized for the deed. So between book 58 and book 106, you have to be on Broad Street doing the research in person. And it's expensive, and that means you have to come to Nantucket, and it's expensive to stay here. Could we do fewer surveys for that chunk of money to make it more attractive for the qualified? You know, maybe Cal would want to reapply if
Right.
they knew it was more feasible.
Duly noted, and that was something I asked flat out.
Yeah, and they said, no.
They weren't really budging on the numbers.
Okay.
Because I introduced, you know, and MHC is not the only state agency that I've dealt with, them not understanding the Nantucket factor. The cost of coming here, the cost of everything, you need to tackle that into it, and they don't. And so when you look at, when we first requested our first project, right after, I think it was right when we became a CLOP, before, they gave me this metrics of a $40,000 project for 140 surveys. Well, as you all know, in the work that it takes to be able to do that detailed research, if research hasn't even been done by you all before, right? Or Betsy and Marcia, it really, it hinders the amount, and you all know, I think, specifically. So, and then that was why, when we were going through the Excel spreadsheet lists of narrowing it down with those lots. And which ones, okay, we know that there's an old 89 survey on this, and it's in macros, but this one over here has one that's been filed over at Plus. Oh, wait a minute, that building's been moved, or the building has been demolished. So we need a continuation sheet. Well, we don't want to use that number, right, with this fiscal project. So again, that was why we're going the road of at least attaining some funding to help us do that with the wind farm, as well as doing the town and the services. So it's a kind of a
40,000 was for how many surveys?
140.
140. Yes, and they did, you know, MHC did say, we the town could always put in additional money. Which is not obviously something that I'll be requesting to bump that up, but again, at the end of the day, I think it's the amount per survey form that they're really, the state is really not budging on because they're not reflective of the cost.
But their goal is to get surveys done and
Absolutely.
promote preservation through that.
Yes.
And if the surveys are stop as a result of those numbers of, you know, what you get per form,
Yep.
it seems like they would want to adjust or be more flexible about the numbers.
Agreed.
Mary,
Hi, Mary Bergman, Nantucket Preservation Trust. With Mr. Chair, has this commission thought about talking to our state delegation? Because it's an odd thing that the Massachusetts Historical Commission would be putting us in a position where we are asking historians to devalue their and undervalue their work. And we are in, you know, the fact that that MPT has to introduce this demolition delay, that we had to, you know, appeal before the select board, the demolition of a contributing structure, that there are demolitions going on, that there are inaccurate surveys, that it's, you know, $285 per survey is what we're asking these people to do. That doesn't even factor in the travel time to come out here. So I don't know what that would be hourly. And again, the Nantucket Preservation Trust has very happily turned over our entire archive to PAL. I don't think they could have done it for that price if NPT didn't give them 25 years of work that we had already done. So I don't know, it seems like it's worth this commission thinking of kicking it up to our to our congressional delegation at the state level.
has anyone had any correspondence with them in the past? Is that ever anything done? Molly?
No, it's not. I mean, I would rather, you know, start with MHC again. It has been quite a few months. From the correspondence that I've had with them, to see if they would be open to their point, you know, expanding the amount. There is a light at the end of tunnel. At the same time, I was having conversations with them. I was having conversations with NEMA for our update to our HMP. And I am proud to say that FEMA did bless us with what we requested. You know, so, I mean, there is, I think, usefulness to be able to ask again, and maybe, you know, if folks are willing to zoom with me, this commission, I think that would be helpful.
I think we'd be willing to do that.
No, I was just thinking, I mean, meanwhile, I mean, the MHC has accepted through PAL what the NPT gave them. So that
Right.
has justified that our local research is as good as.
And that's where taking because at the end of the day, it's just, that's that requirement they put in their boilerplate, right?
I understand
That's
that.
where they've said, Polly, you can reduce that, provided, you know, that finance director is fine with the way you reduce it. We, you know, because there are procurement laws that are way above my head and my pay grade. But at the same time, MHC was willing to say, you can do that, which was very eye-opening for me. Now, does that help the numbers aspect? Not necessarily.
Yeah. And almost just thinking, you know, the 40,000 for 140 surveys, that was set back in 2020, right?
Yeah.
And just like the cost of doing things
Yes,
has increased. Like why,
Yep. Good point.
you know, Nantucket factor or not, like that's happened everywhere, right?
Well, the cost of living on Nantucket is going up significantly.
I have a question, trust, if I could.
Oh,
George, you go first.
So the work that the trust does, if you ask for a house plaque,
mhm.
how's that compared to what these people do? And what do you charge currently for a house plaque?
So we do the full deed, you know, research going back, as you were saying, through the deeds to determine. Okay, well, here's a deed with no house on the property, here's one with it currently. You know, to get that best estimate of a date of construction. So we, and then we all, so, and we currently charge, $12.50 for a house marker. A big chunk of that is the physical cost of producing a marker itself.
Really?
Yeah,
It's about
Yeah.
$600.
it's about $600.
Really?
Yeah.
And they're gonna be aging out now too. They're old as not.
We'll see.
So how much is real, how much of that is so half of that is the labor of tracking down the deeds and all that?
Yeah, and going back and forth with,
And
No.
how much information does that produce as compared to what the survey people produce?
I mean, it doesn't necessarily include outside research into what was going on, you know, in the house over time, things like that, but certainly it gives you the basis of what you need for the historical narrative for a Form B.
George, are you trying to get a realistic price? Like,
If I
I mean,
may.
if there's like 220 or 280 or whatever it is that the state is saying.
Well,
You know,
I'm
for-
just
for
trying
one,
to,
but the real cost is
how realistic,
800.
how realistic this price
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
and how much do they have to do outside of going to the registry of deeds?
If I can
to
answer
all the
some
deeds?
more questions there. What, like Rita said, you know, there's about $600 in the cost of that producing our markers that's spent with research. Occasionally you get a homeowner who says, they want you to track your hours because they want to know if they're going to get a tax deduction. That rarely happens. We're usually going, you know, way over the amount of time that NPT is spending is more than the person's paid. The contractors that we deal with, if we ever sub this work out or who I hire to do other work on Nantucket are charging between $75 to $150 an hour. Those who are architectural historians or historians. And I would say too, the big thing that I see in not being able to hire on island people for this work is when you are hiring somebody who's worked here for 30 or 40 years, you're hiring somebody who understands, they see a name, they immediately know, well, that guy's a carpenter. Yep. Or this person's a that, you know, there's just a knowledge base here that we'd love to, you know, if MHC is going to say that, you know, we can't fit into whatever their format is, that's fine, but it would be great to be able for this commission to have enough money to be able to offer a contractor that we at NPT could build a relationship with that contractor, so that they know what we know as well. It might be worth for this commission to talk to other commissions on the Cape and Martha's Vineyard. Certainly those are expensive places that have similar issues.
I also feel that the results that you come up with have much more, they do much more history, they do much more about the interior.
Our product in a survey.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
the
Well, we're doing
surveys
it different.
that Pal are doing, they're windshield wiper surveys. You know, you're looking outside, they don't go inside,
You guys do it inside now?
you know.
No, not
No.
necessarily. No, like if we do our house history books and like
Okay,
for those, if people would like
those
to,
are-
you know,
Those are way more than 12.
yes, those are more, I mean, the pamphlets
If I
are.
recall, I got my plaque. I just gave you guys the history. You gave me the plaque. Cause I've done history.
Mhm.
I would say if you wanna say windshield, what's windshield is the old 89.
Mhm.
Those were windshield, check a box and half the time there you can't, you know, you're lucky if you get a blurb about it. And that's what we've been utilizing since 88, 89, which is scary. It wasn't until NPT in what, 94? When did you guys start? 97. Should remember that. They're the ones who move forward with actually doing that, right? And not just producing histories, but, you know, once the preservation restriction were starting, they're required to, if you don't have an updated survey to create a Form B. That's the state standard. What I would say about the Form Bs that we're receiving, where there's a lot of boilerplate information on there. It's more in depth because they're getting more into it. We'll dive a little bit more into this tomorrow with CLT if you're there, but it is more about, you know, architectural history itself as well as the social and cultural, who these people are and where do they relate to other structures. And that's kind of what's been missing. And it's very important to be able to have it. So, I mean, I think to say there has been a lot of information and thank God for NPT to be able to provide that information to our consultants, that they are one of the largest and, you know, reputable consulting firms in I think, New England to do what they've been doing. And they're engaged, they want to continue. I think we're dealing with, at the end of the day, timing and projects and.
But it is the point that the local knowledge is so
Local
important.
knowledge is incredible.
And that
I
should be highlighted.
think MHC has recognized that. Which was powerful, you know. Again, if this was a perfect world, there'd be another person that would be handling more of the HTC stuff, and I'd be able to dive more into this, and unfortunately, I'm sad to say I've had to put a lot of this on the back burner.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will change when you get new people.
One other question, before the Preservation Trust, the Historical Association had their plaque thing, which,
You know,
but did they actually take any information from the,
my understanding, and Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, that the NHA's medallion was more of a, what's it called? They were fundraising aspect. So if you had an old house, you could pay them X amount of money and they gave you a medallion. I don't think they did anything.
There was a self-reporting factor there. If you go to their blue files and you pull what that marker that the NHA did, and it's 3 different plaques that indicate different time periods. You can't tell because they've all pretty much oxidized to the same color. As Holly says, it was a fundraising initiative. Not to say that our work isn't all about fundraising as well, but
so they didn't check anything out?
well,
You
no.
just gave them the list of,
You could, I mean, it's pretty funny because some of them are full, some of them are deed chains. And there was letters in the, toward the end of the program about, we really need to start doing this, like deed research. Because I remember pulling one file where it just would, it's effectively, my grandfather told me this house was built in 1703. Okay.
Yeah.
So some of it's really great and some of it's not. That is an additional resource for those folks, but just
I
think.
guess it was, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess it was just buried on the property because I went to them to get the history of the house next door.
Yeah.
And they had it all in detail,
Yeah.
but probably just because those people had done it. And that made it easier when I was trying to, because when I could tell who the abutter was.
Yeah, though you're on
because
the right
One
path,
of the
yeah,
persons who owned my house was a real wheeler dealer and he had stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
And when you try and track it down, you don't know which property it is you're looking at. But knowing who owned the house next door was very helpful, which I got from the NHA,
yeah.
but I guess a lot of theirs were not that good.
Well, to Clement's
Okay.
point too, I think if the goal, I would think massive. I would think the state would want to see the state's money spent in Massachusetts,
Mhm.
on Nantucket,
That's what I thought.
to hire local people. But, obviously NPT has an interest in this, but you're looking at NPT right now, like there's other people we would sub the work out to. And it's hard to get the local people interested in applying for this work because the pay is so low. They can make other money doing other things. So that's the other issue.
Should we go back to Abby? Do you still have a question?
Sorry.
My question, thank you, Rita, was just kind of what you were saying, Mary, is I guess my question was for Holly is, Holly, have we had that discussion with them about like specifically how we would like to encourage local, and that's the real issue. And I don't know if we've had that or not. If we have, they just don't get it. But I thought Mary, it might be helpful to have someone from NPT or some of these organizations like reinforce that message of like, we'd love to help and we'd love to be a part of this, but this is why, You can't, like what you just said about locals, like, I don't know if they even understand that. So that was just my question.
To Abby through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I mean, when I met with them, and I'm trying to remember, it was the beginning of the year. Or one. And, you know, yes, that was my flat out question was, you know, here we know we have subject matter experts here, but they don't meet this qualification. How can we make it? You know, I even had procurement and finance involved, in that meeting, to give us, you know, some guidance on that. You know, we have subject matter experts. How can we tweak the numbers is where I was going with it. But frankly, it sounded like at least tweaking the qualifications will allow us to attract local experts. The funding part, I think, is not for this round, but maybe down the road when we're asking for funding through, you know, we have to budget it. And then we can ask for it, even though it's a 50-50, we could say we want to put in 60,000 and we're asking for $60,000. Or whatever. I mean, and truly, we've been asking for not a lot of money, in my opinion, that we could be asking. So, MHC seems very engaged. I mean, heck, they were very happy to make us a CLG, very proud. And, you know, I think it would be beneficial to move forward and requesting if there is if how that would work would be just look at the RFP and revise the qualification, but for the future, can we ask them for more money to do that? What that would do for them. This is my only question to them is, if we do that, is that gonna increase the amount of surveys that they're gonna require, right? On the output, or would that allow us to bump up the money for that? That was the million dollar question that I don't know the answer to, but I know there's a lot of logistics on this, and I'm thankful that you all are engaged with us and understanding it.
If there's help with, I don't know, inquiry with, the people you're corresponding with, or with, creating a document, is that something that, you know, if someone had the expertise, they could help with the draft or whatever that you could review and revise or tweak in order to move it forward?
Really, you know, I would think. I mean, yes and no, it's, I know what I need to do and I know I need to really do it with finance. There's all these different, obviously, obstacles in the way at the moment, and it has been for a few months. But it's to Mary's point, you know, I appreciate you talking, saying, mentioning that, you know, maybe we need to bring this up to the state. I'd rather hold off on that and actually have more of a detailed conversation. If our local partners and NPC are willing to sit down with me with them, maybe more so Rita, because you sit on both, you know.
Both
I think there would be a conflict there, but I think, you know, again, I flat out asked, there is an Nantucket factor, and if you look at the numbers, because this is the metrics you've given me, and this is what I've been doing. And of course, this is only the third grant project we've done, you know, or asked for. It's a learning, all of this is a learning curve.
Sure.
There's procurement stuff, there's all these different aspects of it, but I think it boils down to, we have subject matter experts here. Can we, what can we do besides tweaking the RFQ to, allow them to be able to apply? And what can we do to, I guess, allow the state to look at the fact that, well, you haven't even taken into your point, inflation. You know, and not just the Nantucket factor, not just the cost of living, but inflation across the board. I know we belabor this, but I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having, I think we're also excited about the survey program and want to see it succeed and move forward. And the extra legs that are happening as some are slowing down, others are picking up is good, but wouldn't it be great if all of it were like on high? So, thank you. Maybe we should move on to commission goals.
Should be in the second to last one.
Or the CPC,
Thing.
but, or where are you?
So basically, I think I mentioned just that the PIN is starting off on their, projects. Again, there's going to be some involvement, with the commission's side. We did, we're partners with it as well as wrote a letter of support. And, there's gonna be public engagement, and I think this commission would be the facilitator for that public engagement. When we get to that point, and, I had the opportunity to go into a house on Silver Street, Linda. Introducing to the neighbors and then you were, with the owners, you were willing to let me see this house. The Dover's, the old barn there in the corner. Oh, awesome.
Well, that is-
Yes,
Yeah.
it was really cool. And I mentioned to them about the CPC project and the work that we've been doing, because it's not just, creating forms, because that's gonna be a whole separate time frame. This is gonna be doing the recon survey and getting the information and, really boiling, even working with, the archaeology folks from, the mass that we have here, as well as the Boston Museum of African History in Nantucket, involved with them because of the complex and I think rich history, both tangible and intangible, that's in the West Monomoy area, which is five corners, brought up that way. And it's amazing the history that's there that we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, there's been layers of history, like you go to certain parts of the town, especially in the core, and it's pretty much the same. Or it's been pretty much the same since 1846 after the Great Fire. You look at parts of the five corners and went from, there were more structures there than there are now. We know that for a fact. There were churches, there were all these different community structures that are no longer there. And so there's these layers of history. So basically they want to do not just they're diving into and creating forms at the end of the day, which is useful for us, but also being able to talk to the community, get a lot of information. So anyway, it's going to be, they'll be kicking off on that. And when they get to a certain point, I'll ask them to come to the commission and give us an update.
Right.
I saw a lot of green on this post.
I have a more updated version I was gonna send you.
Okay. Do you wanna share that?
Yeah, if you guys want, I could probably just share it if it's easier.
Perfect.
Okay. Cause I just updated this, seeing that it was. Okay. All right, so.
Don't try.
Look it up.
There is a lot of green, but it's good. I changed a bunch of dates though. So I said for this, we're still working through the batches. Is that correct, Holly?
Yeah.
So that's continuing. Rita, I know you had talked about.
Yeah.
reaching out to-
I sent them a contact last month and then never got a response. So I will just email Jessica, the director, directly and see what she has to say. So that's
Okay.
still ongoing, but yeah.
They're doing their awards.
Yeah. So I'll wait until after that.
Um,
Absolutely.
I changed that to.
Oh,
hold on, I did-
Yeah.
didn't mean to do that. I was trying to change this. I'm gonna change this to ongoing. Is that right? I think it's ongoing.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Holly, I know you were just talking about the CPC. The deadline is the
September.
30th, right?
Yeah, I thought it's in the beginning of September. I always think it's like right in the street part.
Well,
Yes.
But that would be something to think about with what we want to do. I will say, I heard from one of the members on CPC that they got a lot more preservation related applications this year, which I thought was excellent. Yeah. It's been that way in the past, so.
Well, they're all good in percentages, but they, I think the worry was that it was gonna be shifting from preservation to housing, and, so I'm happy to hear preservation is still.
Yes. Sewer force main on this one, really, I don't have any more update. I did go out on a brief tour with David Gray, before they paved Lily Street. And, you know, of course, because of the time of
Thank you, George.
year, February, we, you know, it's gonna be phased out. And I will say this, so everybody hears me, that, David will let me know if there's any questions when they bring back all that area, which is at his site.
And that's in the fall.
I don't think so. I don't-
That's when that's done, right? Which is,
Are they gonna wait to finish everything till everything is done? Is that the idea?
I don't know if it could be piecemealing it or not. I just
Okay.
know that they have to, you know, put the asphalt down for the busy season. And then get back to the nitty gritty when, you know,
When they have time.
well, when it's, you know,
Yeah.
less people here.
And also the perfect weather and.
Right, right. But all that historic material is going back.
I naively thought they were gonna be putting all that in place last spring.
Yeah.
This is right. Looks like next spring.
Well, you know, again, I think at the end of the day, we remember the catastrophic failure that happened in.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah,
It's a huge project. Yeah.
Definitely. The grants, just to mention, I forwarded to CLG, actually, I just received something from MHC about more grants and information. And about projects that they just recently got, sent grants out, so take a look at that when you get a chance.
Whoever's got the screen, can they blow it up so that it's mostly the.
Can you make that bigger?
Scroll.
Your end?
I think
yes. Let me see.
You're
My
good now.
notes. There we go.
Here you go.
Is that better?
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah.
I got that email with this Monday.
And if you all are not on Mass Fist Press, the listserv with MHC, I recommend you get on that. And then I also wanted to mention, you should be receiving direct correspondence from an APC, National Lands Preservation Commission, as members. We're all members. That was part of our CLG funding. That we were able to get that, so if you are not, let me know, and I will make sure that they have your. They send us, I mean, they send it to me anyways, and then I forward you guys, but you can have that direct relationship as well. Nothing for section 106.
And then everyone should know CLG meetings tomorrow.
Yep.
We haven't had any new tax credit. We're still working on the solar video. I know because it's summertime that might take time. And then I just added this, Mass DEP is doing a deconstruction workshop on July 11th. People are interested, just something to go throw out there. And none of the other ones are new. Like we had talked about the maritime education grant. Oh, actually, I did email the, Niall from the NHA and Glenn, who is a consultant, so we might have a historic structure conservation workshop, but we're waiting to see when Glenn will be on island, so when I know more, I will obviously let you guys know when it is. But for now, we're waiting to see when he'll be on island to do that. And then ongoing collaboration.
And on that note, I think, as you all know, this is the time of year that the select board does their reappointments and all that stuff. Reappointed Angus, but we have 2 members that are not asking to be reappointed, so we have 2 spaces that are available. If you know anybody in the community that's got preservation and Nantucket history knowledge that would be interested, I think, that would be most helpful. I did send these members Rob eventually. See if he or somebody knows if he'd be interested, and I told him that we were meeting today, so, yeah.
But is there a deadline for that application process?
There is through a town administration, but they're ongoing, like they just did their 2nd batch, they're gonna be doing another batch, so, you know. The sooner that they get that application to Erica, the better, but if anybody has any questions on it, I can definitely point them in the right direction, and I have the form too. I just think it's all about, you know, people that are interested, that have the time to be able to meet with us and you know, do the.
Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes from the last?
I did.
Meeting?
I propose they are approved.
Did we have a second? Thank you, Rita. On your motion,
Aye.
Rita,
Aye.
Abby,
Aye,
Nikki,
Oh,
you're on mute, Nick.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't at the meeting, so I probably should abstain.
okay, I'm an aye as well. Thank you again, Abby, for
Yes.
writing those up. In general, I would rather see less, he said, she said, that because we work as a commission. But I just in trying to compose the letter, about, Pleasant Street and Williams Lane. It was tough to try to like consolidate that, so I understand the, you know, the challenge with it, but as much as we can sort of consolidate to the overall, you know, feeling of the commission, the better. Is there any other business? Seeing none, I take a
Motion to
motion
adjourn.
for adjournment.
Second.
Clement on your motion,
Aye.
Rita,
Aye.
Abby,
Aye.
Mickey,
Aye.
and I as well. Thank you all for joining.
See you all tomorrow. And tomorrow is Zoom only.
Oh.